Hi friends, welcome back to Math with Naz. Today I have a two-step word problem for you. With this application problem, what you're going to need is your journal that you're doing your work in, or really any piece of paper will do, and a pencil. We're going to read the problem together. Then I'm going to ask you to pause the video and solve the problem using the three-step method we use for all word problems. Remember what that is? I say, you say. Read, draw, write. So go get what you need, come on back, and we'll do some math together. Okay, third graders, the first step in doing a three-step word problem is to read the problem. So let's look at this problem together. Nell's mom partitions her garden into 4 equal-sized sections to plant tomatoes, squash, peppers, and cucumbers. What fraction of the garden is available for the tomatoes? Now, third graders, I know that many of you have picked up a pencil or you've picked up your dry erase marker and you're already starting to solve. Stop. Before you get into solving, you have to make sure you really understand what's going on in the word problem. So let's think about it. What do you notice about this story problem? Go ahead and tell somebody sitting next to you what the story problem is about, or if nobody's sitting there, just tell it into the computer. I'm listening. Maybe third graders, you noticed that this story problem is one that is really timely. It's spring, people are planting. So is Nell's mom, apparently. She has a garden and she partitions or splits up her garden into 4 pieces, but not just any pieces. They're equal sized. That means each piece is the same size. In that garden, what does she plant? Go ahead and say it out loud. She plants tomatoes. She plants squash. She plants peppers. And she plants cucumbers. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 different crops. What else do you know? You also know that the equal size pieces are 4. That's important. So what is the question asking us? I'm going to read it again, and then I want you to turn to somebody sitting next to you or say it into the computer. What exactly does this problem want to know? What fraction of the garden is available for the tomatoes? So third graders, maybe you're noticing that Nell's mom has partitioned her garden into 4 equal-sized pieces and has 4 different crops she wants to plant. The question wants to know how big the portion, the equal-sized portion is for the tomatoes. So let me ask you a question. Could the tomatoes be one size and the portion for the cucumbers or the peppers or the squash be a different size? Yes, no, and why? Maybe you said that the portion size, the size of the garden for the squash, peppers, and cucumbers has to be exactly the same size as the portion for the tomatoes. That's what it means as 4 equal-sized sections. So what I want you to do right now is go ahead and pause the video. Draw those 4 equal-sized portions and then label the picture with the tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and squash, and tell me how big is the portion that was for the tomatoes. Don't forget to pause the video if you haven't done that already and solve the problem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and solve this problem, and you can check your work based on my solving. So I'm going to right away draw Nell's mom's garden. And I'm going to do that in a rectangle. I've often seen gardens in rectangles. I myself don't have a garden because I'm not, oh my God, my face is very close. Okay, third graders, I hope that you paused the Okay, third graders, I hope you paused the video. And now what I would like to do is I'm going to draw a picture to represent Nell's mom's garden, and you can check your work. If you don't have a picture, pause the video, draw a rectangle, and partition it into 4 equal-sized pieces. That's part of the RDW method. Okay, so I have my rectangle here, and I'm going to go ahead and partition it into 4 equal-sized pieces. So I am going to cut it first, partition it first in half. So now I have 1 half and another half. And I'm going to partition each of those halves into halves. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal-sized pieces. I know that those pieces are not completely equal. I know that because I just estimated and I didn't use a ruler, but that's okay. They are mostly. Now, if you drew this line way over here and this portion of the garden is super big, then you're gonna wanna erase it and make it look as close to equal as possible. So just to help me out, I'm gonna label the tomatoes, the squash, the peppers, and the cucumbers. I am now going to write a fraction that represents each of these pieces of the whole. So I know there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. The total number of pieces go on the bottom of the fraction. Now each of these boxes represents the portion of the garden that goes for the tomatoes. That's 1 portion goes for the tomatoes, 1 for the squash, 1 for the peppers, and 1 for the cucumbers. I've now solved my problem. I can say Nell's mom uses 1/4 of her garden for tomatoes. Okay, 3rd graders, but like I said, this is a 2-step problem. So if you have not gotten this problem completed, go ahead and do that because you will need this problem to help you solve the next problem we're gonna do together. Okay, 3rd graders, here's part 2 of this 2-step word problem. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. I would like you to follow along with me, and then we'll work together to figure out how we're going to solve it. Nell talked her mom into planting beans and lettuce too. She used equal-sized sections for all the vegetables. What fraction do the tomatoes have now? So go ahead and turn to somebody sitting next to you, or if no one's sitting next to you, tell it to me on this television screen. What has changed? This part of the story problem does not make sense on its own. You have to use the first story problem that we answered. Tell me what has changed from this first story problem to where we are now. I'm going to read it again. Think about what has changed. Nell talked her mom into planting beans and lettuce too. She used equal-sized sections for all the vegetables. What fraction do the tomatoes have now? Okay, 3rd graders, go ahead, tell me what's changed. Okay, 3rd graders, maybe you noticed that Nell's mom's garden got bigger. It got bigger because Nell talked her into planting 2 more kinds of crops, beans and lettuce. So we know that beans and lettuce did not get planted all by themselves. They got planted in this garden. So in other words, what I'm noticing is that Nell's mom added on to her garden. She added on a section for beans and a section for lettuce. I also noticed that those sections that she added were the same size. They were equal sized as the section up here. But if she added on 2 more sections, does that still make each section 1/4? Yes, no, and why? Go ahead and whisper it to someone sitting next to you or just to the computer screen. Pretend like you're talking directly to me or a friend in the classroom. I agree that the sections are no longer 1/4 because the original fraction has grown, or I'm sorry, the original shape or garden bed has grown. How much has it grown by? That's right, it's grown by 2 additional sections. Okay, let's take a look at the question and really try to understand what it's asking us. What fractions do the tomatoes have now? Oh, the first question asked us how much space was available for the tomatoes, and we solved it. We counted the entire number of pieces, and we partitioned one, or we held one over just for those yummy tomatoes. Now that 2 more sections have been added on, figure out how much space the fractions have now. Here's an important twist, third graders, and something to remember. The size of the space for the tomatoes has not gotten smaller, but the shape, the garden has grown. So go ahead, pause the video, and solve this story problem. Okay, third graders, welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle to represent the new garden. And I'm making it bigger purposefully because the first section was 4ths. But I've added 2 more sections. 4 sections plus 2 sections make how many sections? Say it. That's right. It makes 6 sections because 4 plus 2 is 6. So I need to now partition my garden, or Nell's mom's garden, into 6 pieces. I like to do that by starting to partition into thirds and then partitioning the thirds in half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, just like I did earlier, I'm going to label each portion like Nell's mom might to tell me what's growing there. I need 1 portion for the tomatoes. I need 1 portion for the squash, 1 portion for the peppers, 1 portion for the cucumbers. Originally, this is how big Nell's mom's garden was. But Nell, being the cunning gardener, wanted her to have more space in her garden. So they added on a section for beans and a section for lettuce. Now I'm going to think about what fraction that is represented by the tomatoes. So that means I need to find out how many parts there are total, but I know that because you already told me. There are 6 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the tomatoes represent 1 portion, the squash is 1, the peppers is 1 portion, the cucumbers are 1 portion, the beans are 1 portion, and the lettuce is 1 portion. So now I've done a drawing, I've solved my problem. The tomatoes take up 1/6 of the garden, and I'm going to go ahead and write my answer. The tomatoes have 1/6 the garden. Again, the portion or the fraction didn't get smaller. The size is the same. What changed is the garden got bigger. All right, third graders, nice work today. Be sure when you send in your independent work, which I'm about to share with you, also send in how you solved these problems, okay? To write down your answers. So I just went ahead and put the date, which is 5 5-12-20, and then I wrote the lesson. This is lesson 6, but it's 6.2 because it's the second half. Go ahead and label the next blank page in your paper like that. Okay, now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions to each shape. So I'm going to write the questions here at top. I'm going to start by writing total number of parts. And I did that by writing total number on top and of parts on the bottom, just so that I can fit all of my questions this way. Now, if you would prefer to label it like this, no worries, however you prefer. Just make sure you answer all 4 parts for each shape. The next thing you're gonna write is total number of shaded parts. I'm just gonna write total shaded parts, because that's gonna trigger me to answer that question. Again, total shaded parts. When you are done with that, you're gonna draw another line and write unit fraction, because that's what you're gonna write on that part, unit fraction. And then right next to that, you're going to write fraction shaded. So your journal should look right now like my journal. Go ahead and pause the video until it does. Okay, let's take a look at the first shape. Count the total number of parts. Well, it's up close like this. Count the total number of parts shaded. Go ahead and answer all 4 questions for that shape. Say the total number of parts, the total shaded parts, the unit fraction, and the fraction shaded. Remember, both of these last ones need to be in fraction form. Okay, you're going to write all of those on your paper labeled 3A, and you're gonna write the answers underneath the heading, just like a functional text. Then go down and label 3B, and 3B should match this shape. Go ahead and count the number of parts. Count the number of parts that are shaded. Then answer all 4 questions about 3B. Then go ahead in your journal and label the next line as 3C. Take a look at this fraction. Count all of the parts. Count the parts shaded. Then answer all of the questions for 3C, all 4 questions. Pause this video at any point to work along with me. When you're done with that, label the next line as 3D. Count the number of parts, count the parts shaded, and then answer all 4 of these questions for 3D in your journal. When you've done with that, here's your last one. Label the next line as 3E. Count the total parts. Count the total parts shaded. Then go ahead and answer all 4 of these questions. 3rd graders, I will take the unit fraction, or I will take the whole number that represents this shape, your choice. So you can write the fraction shaded or the whole number. When you're done, go ahead and send your work into your teacher so we can see all your great mathematical thinking. And come back tomorrow for some new math lessons. We'll be moving on to lesson 7 in module 5 tomorrow. Thank you, 3rd graders, for all your hard work. Take care. Talk soon.